Okay, so now we're actually going to get into a little bit of a more advanced theory. This is something that I have anecdotally, come up with over the years. It may not be 100% accurate. All right, there are things that I feel from over my driving experience and driving career that this is as accurate a picture as I can put it in the simplest terms. All right, this is to do with grip theory in a drift car. Okay, and the reason why this is important is because it has to do a lot with the understanding of how you're tuning the car to get to do what you want it to do. There's a lot of concepts that go back to this over and over and over again. So I just want to get right into it. This is going to be a very simplified look at it, but hopefully you'll understand, because I try to convey this a lot of times. I'm not sure that I can really do it in a whiteboard in a quick fashion, but I'm going to go ahead and try this. Okay, so grip theory, the way that I like to stuff, is the balance between the front and the rear. This is what I'm trying to basically put out, all right? The amount of grip on the front of the car versus the amount of grip towards the rear. And this is one of the things that I try to recommend to people, is to not put too high a grip tire on the front of their car. And the reason why this is important, because a lot of people have trouble initially with understeer. Right? And the understeer is some part the car, but most part the driver. Because understeer, unless it's real bad, I mean like crushing, punishing understeer, most of the time it's driver error. It's turning the wheel too much. All right? So, but the reaction is most people, they go out, they drive at their first drift event, or their second drift event, or their third drift event. They're having constant problems with understeer. So what they do is they go out and they buy the stickiest, widest tires that they can fit on the front of their car, because that's going to fix it. Well, it does, but it also hinders them in another way. And it's because you're typically at that point, you don't have a lot of power, so you're running low grip tires on the rear. So now you have a massive difference between the amount of grip on the front of the car and the amount of grip on the rear of the car. Okay? Now, what that's doing, let's see if I can adjust the camera down here a little bit. Yeah. So what that's doing is it's changing your pivot point on the car. Okay, so let's start with a car that has, say, even amount of mechanical grip front and rear. So you're a very similar tire compound and a very similar tire size on the front of the car and the rear of the car. The pivot point at that point, making everything equal. So the weight balance of the car is 50-50. All of that stuff is equal, and your suspension tuning is on point. The pivot point of your car is going to be right around the center, okay, with an equal balance from the amount of grip to the front and the amount of grip to the rear. Now, there's a lot of things that can influence this, but I'm just talking about tires right now, tires and suspension setup at the moment. So with the pivot point right in the center, when the car tries to get going at a 90-degree angle, it's going to essentially, when you throw the car in hard, it's going to want to just travel that direction right from the pivot, because it's neither the front or the rear is dragging the car down. It's all equally sliding. Right? If you put too much grip on the front of the car, what ends up happening is you reduce understeer, but the pivot point moves forward. So with too much front grip bias, like a lot of guys at lower end drift events and grassroots series will have a very grippy tire up front and not much grip in the back, their pivot point ends up being here. Now, what happens when you do that is essentially now the car constantly wants to swing from the rear either direction. It's going to want to go, as soon as you throw the car, it's going to be extremely difficult to catch, because the front tires, as soon as they max out at their steering angle, so say you have factory steering angle 38-40 degrees. As soon as you hit that 38-40 degrees, the front tires become a brake. They just start scrubbing along, and then the car just spins out immediately. Just whoop! And you can't really do anything about it. At least that day. One of the things you can do is you can lower your rear tire pressure, increase front tire pressure to try to get the fronts to slide. But not a lot of people think that way. They don't want the front to slide because they don't want understeer. They're just, programmed to not want that. So what they'll do is they'll immediately go out and buy steering angle. Either rack spacers or a full angle kit. They'll drive and they'll just keep spinning all day long with their nice super grippy tires up front, and then they'll claim that it's because they need more steering angle. Yes and no. Steering angle is nice to have. I'm not going to lie. I work for a company that designs steering components to give you more steering angle. But I do want to state that most people don't need it. For the large majority, most people don't really need the extra steering angle. Having a properly set up car can make up for a lot of the difference there. And this is also another fact, is that no matter how much steering angle you have, there is no kit on the market that actually hits a full fat 90 degrees, right? But you'll see people throwing cars in past 90 degrees. They'll be throwing cars in backwards. Now, how do they make that work? It works with the balancing the front and the rear of the car. If you have too much front grip, backwards entries just don't work. You just spin. The rear can't gain traction enough to actually power you out of the turn. Same thing goes with trying to run too much rear grip, where you have a hard time actually having enough angle because there's so much rear grip that the car will just want to drive out of whatever you're trying to do. There's always a balance. You're trying to figure that out. And realistically, most FD cars are actually set up to where they understeer quite badly if you drive them normally. They have a very, very high disparity between the amount of rear grip and the front grip. I'll see guys will say, well, I see FD dudes are running 245s or 255s on the front of their car, and they're like the really high grip stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but they're running 295, 305s on the rear with very little tire pressure. I mean, sub 20 PSI in the rear tires with extremely low spring rates, tuned valving specifically set up to make those cars squat and hook. The amount of grip that they're dealing with in the back of those cars, I mean, we're talking about enough grip to where they're running street tires, but they're able to bog. Some of these cars are able to get them tuned bogging with 1,000 wheel horsepower. They have 1,000 wheel horsepower, and the engine's struggling to break those tires loose. All right, so them running a 245 or 255 on the front, well, they need it because the grip bias is so far back and they're transferring so much weight that they need that extra contact patch up front. But most dudes in grassroots events with sub 500 horsepower with relatively stiff setups, a 225 is all you need, dude. I almost don't even care what you're driving. A 220, you don't need more than a 225 on the front. As long as your suspension's set up properly, you don't need that extra grip. That's not doing you anything. Unless you are throwing some real grip in the back of the car, a 225 is perfect. It's fine. I personally run a 205 on the front of my car, and I run crappy front tires because I found that having a nominal grip bias where it's balanced front to rear is extremely important for the car to handle properly, for it to not constantly whip out around you. So if you want to throw big, deep entries, get some crappier front tires. I'm not saying get all seasons and throw those on because they present their own problems, but tune your car specifically so that you can exceed the amount of steering angle that you have without the car spinning, and just basically let the front end wash. And this is one of the problems that I have with some angle kits on the market today that tout that they have a flat contact patch on their front wheels. This might be okay in a professional car. All right, I'm talking about top level, 1,000 horsepower, tons of rear grip, right? That might be okay because they're already snug in the back, man. They've got it set, right? The sucker squats, it powers out of the turn, they might need the front grip. But the large majority of dudes at the grassroots, sub 600-700 horsepower, right? Running nearly slick levels of grip in the rear, do not need a flat contact patch in the front. Some of these kits, these angle manufacturers, they seemingly have this very strange idea that because it looks better, it performs better. It's an aesthetic thing. People like the look of a flat contact patch on the front. Doesn't mean it works properly. When your tires lean over at high levels of steering angle, at high levels of steering angle, you're trying not to spin. That's the whole point, right? So the wheels laying over is reducing the contact patch on the front, which is thereby progressively reducing grip in the front, which helps the grip balance more towards the rear. Plus the jacking force that you get on a normal front end is going to pick the front end up a little bit, and then that is going to help transfer weight to the rear of the car. And when it transfers weight to the rear of the car, it's going to help you not spin. Yeah, it's pretty easy to understand. It's not rocket science. The balance of grip is very, very important on the car, and it's something that you should really think about, because the pivot point where the car rotates around is going to have a very large effect on how the car handles in general. If you want to go in and throw big entries and throw the car really fast and have it be stable, you're going to want to have the pivot point more towards the center, more towards where the driver is located at, all right? Or the physical center of the car. Same sort of difference. That's one of the reasons why I feel that some people miss the plot on this, and then they go and they just buy the stickiest tire they can up front, and then they leave crap tires in the back, and the car just whips around all day, and then they go, oh, well, I need big angle kit. I need lots of steering angle to stop that from happening. No, man. Just work on your setup. Work on that grip balance. And I hope this has kind of sparked a little something in some people's heads, because this is something that I'm constantly trying to tell people, and it just doesn't seem like it's common knowledge. It doesn't seem like it's very well understood setup. You know, it allows you to really think about certain products on the market and be like, okay, well, is this going to help improve my pivot point? Is this going to help move the pivot point back? Or am I just spending money to make the problem worse? Am I spending money that's going to just, it doesn't do anything for me? That's what I want you to be able to ask that question. I want you to be able to look at things and be able to understand what they're doing. Well, anyway, that's all it is for today. I don't really have much else going on. I'm going to be headed back up to Lakeland. We have an event coming up on Sunday that I'm running along with a couple friends. Everybody's invited. Come out to Auburndale Speedway in Winter Haven, Florida. If you're around Central Florida area, definitely come hang out with us. I'd love to answer some questions in person. And might even have a couple of cars lined up to drive. I don't know. A few friends said that they wanted me to take their cars out for a spin, so I'm excited for that. There'll be definitely video that I'll post up from the event. I might even do a live stream, actually. All right. Have a good day. Thanks for watching.